reuploaded. Ladies and gentlemen, today this House believes that the parliamentary democracy requires the inclusion of the survey referenda on important issues. What do we understand by parliamentary democracy? We understand that every type of democracy that has a legislative body, for example, the parliament. Of course, a survey referenda is a binding referendum imposed by the population with a petition and having a number of people sign them, and of course with the parliament that has debates on it and considers it an important issue for the state and the people. We have today, we see that we have a representative democracy and of course a direct democracy. But we see that in the representative democracy, the active participation of the citizens isn't really there. We see that there is a low representative elections, we see that the trust in the institutions is very low, and we see of course the lack of information that that people are not having. And we also see that we have a direct democracy. Basically, direct democracy is a perfect democracy in an ideal world. And we see that it is actually impracticable because it allows, in the real sense of the word, to express the power of the people. And of course, this motion asks us today requires us to make a balance between these two types of democracy, a direct one and a representative one. And in order to do that, we have to find a way to mix these two types of democracy in order to have a better representativity and of course a better efficiency. Why is that? Because by mixing them, we've told you the disadvantages and the advantages. We have to remove the disadvantages and of course to improve the advantages. And we will have a representativity mixed with the involvement of the citizens in this direct review. Okay. So I'm going to talk today on two arguments of our case, and my colleague will present the third argument, that is about the polarization of the society. And I'm going to talk first of all about empowering the people, and second of all about civic sense and how this measure will involve the society. Passing on to my first argument, I'm going to talk about empowering people. As I told you in the status quo, we see today that the lack of interest of young people in in this, and we see that we elect our representatives once in 4 years, and we see that it's not actually efficient. Why is that? Because throughout these 4 years, we might not agree with their decision, and we might have a different opinion on that. And we cannot actually have an opinion on that, and we can actually not change and involve directly in the decision that might affect us as a society. So we see that politicians in their campaign elections have promises and promise things to people. Now, in order to keep that promises, we need to have this referendum. Why is that? Because it's a way to make them to do their jobs. It's a way to keep their promises to the society, and it's a tool to fulfill the wishes of the citizens, ladies and gentlemen. It's a way for the improvement of the society. We also told you that the state has prerogatives. So, for example, in order to fulfill if they're fulfilling 9 of 11 of 10 prerogatives, we'll have in the actual system people that can really fix this problem if they see it, and can really have the state, the politicians make them fulfill 100% their job. So by having this referendum, we're going to fulfill actually the politicians' mission as a whole, and we're going to make them fulfill what they promised in the election and keep their promises by involving the people in it. We also have our second argument of the case, the civic sense. We are talking today, as I said in the status quo, the people that are not involved. We see today that people that are not involved don't actually know what is really happening in the political scene, and they are not really interested in that. So they blame the system for not working good. And we do not think that is a good thing, especially because by introducing benefit this. Yes?
You mentioned lack of interest and lack of knowledge. Does that make the citizens capable to participate in the referendums?
No, of course. They do not, and that I'm going to explain in my logical argument about the civic sense. By letting them involve, they are going to get informed about the political scene, and they're going to choose to have the choice to let their voice be heard by the state in important issues. And it's like we were having this debate. And of course, the observer will not be really interested in this debate, will not really be aware of the details and everything that's happening there. So you see, on the other hand, the judge that it has to be involved in it and has to be aware of everything and to be actively involved in the debate. So you see that this is actually what the referendum does. It involves people to let them to have an active performance as a citizen and to let them take to be aware of what's happening on the political scale and to have better solutions and alternatives. So what have we told you today? We told you today that we have a problem. We told today that we have the lack of trust in the institution of the state. We have the low presence at the election, and we have the lack of information regarding this in a representative democracy. And we also have this direct democracy that it empowers as a whole the powers of people and it will be perfect in an ideal world. But we have to make a balance between these two and to have a representative mixed, representativity mixed with a direct input of citizens. We have to make them aware of what is happening in this actual system, and we have to empower them to, first of all, if they not agree with what the politicians have promised them in the election and they do not fulfill it, we have the means to let them single out the problems of the system and let them have this chance to improve the actual system. And we also have the civic sense. We told that by involving in this actual mix of referenda, we will have people that are going to think of their choices and are going to think on the are going to be aware of the political scene that stands before them and are going to be informed because exactly the important issues that are implemented on them and on the society. So, having all this in consideration, we beg you to propose.
Ladies and gentlemen, the proposition team has made us now believe that parliamentary democracy has a problem, that people lack their interest and they have not the chance to participate in a democracy as they propose. But let me tell you that we, as an opposition team, don't believe that the parliamentary democracy has a problem. We think that the actual system does work. We think that people are able to choose the parliament, to choose the representatives, to choose who are going to promise, take into consideration these promises the proposition team has mentioned they have made to the people, that they are the ones they have voted for and they are the ones who have to take, give them this to the people. Because we think that by changing parliamentary democracy, by including surrogate referendum, this will only have great costs that we are not willing to take. First, I'll start my speech, thank you, by rebutting what the proposition team has said, and then I'll refer to our case, thank you. First, they define parliamentary democracy as any democracy that has a parliament. Well, that's not what parliamentary democracy is. It's a democracy in which people elect a parliament, and then the party that has a majority in the parliament elects a prime minister. We also want to ask them which do they consider important matters. You can choose for maybe you are an important matter for someone to, I don't know, change a law that has no major influence, to, I don't know, approve abortion. But where do you draw the line? No thinking which are important matters and which are not. The proposition team failed to do this in their first speech, and it was very important for them to do it. Okay. You also talked about how the parliament would choose which things to take to the sub-region referendum. But if the parliament doesn't want to approve a law and doesn't want to approve the referendum to happen, they won't do it. So when the participation of the people enter in this new system you're proposing, people won't have the right to choose which referendums to do or not. So what's the idea of giving them more power on something that at the end they have no power, I think. You also talked about how we have to improve the advantages and diminish the bad things this system produces for it to come to a maybe ideal democracy and ideal world. But you haven't mentioned which are the advantages you are proposing to be taken into consideration, to be reinforced. We haven't heard this from you, so how can you expect for us to take into consideration this point? You also talked on your first argument how this empowered the people because they had a lot of interest and the system was not efficient if they didn't have an interest in these citizens. So, in a point of information, my companion answered this to you. Why, if you don't participate in the actual democracy, why, if you aren't taking into consideration the African system, what would take you to participate in a sub-region referendum? That doesn't make sense at all. You also talked about how this improves the system, imposes a civic sense on people. Let me finish my point. How this imposes a civic sense on the people. But if they have promised things and they haven't done them, and if they're asking people to participate for these promises to be fulfilled, don't you think this takes credibility out of the system in terms of giving it to it? Because if people are the ones who have to choose, they are not giving the power they need to their parliament, so you are at the end not improving the system. Yes.
Told that the survey referendum will be proposed either by the state or by the citizens by petitions that are being signed by a high number of people. Yes. So it's
I understand your point, but at the end the parliament is the one that's going to take that decision to put the referendum or not. So if they decide not to do it, what's the point of making it out? So people won't have the voice too. No. Now, moving on to our case. We have separated our case into two main splits, no thank you. The first one talks about the negative effects on decisions that will be developed by me, and then my companion will talk about the parliament. My argument has three levels of analysis. First, the long-term vision versus the circumstantial majorities, then, which talks about how there is not enough quorum, and the third one about how we are oversimplifying complex issues. First, how long-term vision goes against circumstantial majorities. That population is not capacitated to take these important decisions, as I have mentioned before. Representatives study these laws. Representatives study and knows about what they're going to change. If you go and ask the majority of the population what they want, because if they're not informed, if they're not clearly prepared to take this decision, the decision at the end might take a bigger risk than it had before. No, thank you. And if you're telling me that we should educate people before taking a decision, that's a big cost for the state. That's a cost that we are not willing to take because it only takes instability to the system that already works fine. People are easily affected by sporadic situations, by propaganda. How do we know that the person who is taking such important decisions He's in his right mind to take that decision right now. He influences the future of his country, because we're not talking about here simple decisions or decisions that are a matter of a fact for some people from the country. They are important for the home country. Yes.
So you're saying that the parliament, we are thinking today that there are campaigns made a month earlier, so the people are informed, and if the people make a referendum, they are not going to make
But don't you think that informing the people, it's another cost? Not the whole population is informed of everything that's happening. No, thank you. So if you're taking into consideration that everyone can vote and informed from this, that's not a viable system. Then, moving on to my second level of analysis, which talks about how there is not enough funding. As you self-proposed, there is a lack of participation of people in actual governments. There, indeed, will be a lack of participation of people in referendums. Results won't represent the majority if people are not participating on these referendums. So, at the end, there's no true representation of what regular citizens want. To illustrate this, we have an example. In London, they asked the people who live there if they wanted a mayor. 34% of the citizens who were able to vote voted. 72 said yes, 28 said no, and 66% of Londoners failed to vote. So at the end, this clearly favored the supporters of the mayor because they had an objective, because they went to vote. But to the majority of the population who is not informed, who is not being taken into consideration in this referendum, at the end, they're not being represented. So, because I have proved to you how there is not enough forum, how people are very influenced by sporadic situations and can't take these important decisions, and at the end, these decisions would be taken wisely, I beg to propose.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The proposition team stands for today, for the fact that in order to have a working society, in order to have an improvement on the level of the society, we need to have this sovereign referenda. Apparently, the opposition team doesn't actually understand what means a sovereign referenda. A sovereign referenda, ladies, means a binding one, and that means that the result of this referenda will be voted without any doubts by the parliament. First of all, I will rebuttal the opposition case, and second of all, I will resustain my own case, and I will present the third argument of the proposition case. But let's see exactly what the opposition team doesn't actually understand today. They try to explain the fact that people are not capable to take decisions, and that there will be a big chaos when we talk about the implementation of this system. But they don't actually take in consideration the fact that when people will know that they are actually involved in this society, that they have the right to choose, they will and they can be involved directly, then they will think about how they have to vote, and they will be informed, because they don't take into consideration the fact that before a referendum there are a lot of campaign of information, and we are talking about two kinds of referenda, ladies and gentlemen, and apparently the opposition team didn't actually understand that fact. We talk about the referendum called by the population, and we also talk about, no thank you, and we also talk about the referendum called by the parliament. It doesn't actually matter who calls that referendum. The result is more important, and the proposition team stands for today for the fact that people need to have something to say in order to have a working system. People need to do more than to elect their representatives in order to have an improvement at the level of the society. We want today to have to mix those two types of parliamentary representative democracy, and also this direct democracy, who is actually the best democracy that we can have, but is impractical. And the proposition team proposed us today to mix these two types in order to have an efficient system system and in order to have a real improvement. And I will prove that by my arguments. Let's see exactly how the opposition team speaks about the fact that we won't have enough quorum and that there will be a lot of cost and what we are going to do with that cost. Well, the problem with the quorum is that if we won't have it, it's simple, the referendum won't pass. But when people are directly involved in this matter, when people actually want something to change, something to happen, then surely they will have then surely they will be involved and they will do something in order that thing to happen. So we'll have this work related to the cost. We see the fact that referendums are called right now, but the costs are not that important because we have the petitions that citizens can do, and we have the referendum called by the parliament. And we see that at the end of the day, the result is not binding, and that's what we stand for today, this result to be binding, because at the end of the day, we believe that the opinion of the citizens is more important than some cost. Passing on to the proposition case, let's see exactly what we proved to you today. We already explained you the fact that we have two types of democracy and we want the best for our citizens and for the whole society. We have the representative democracy and we have the direct democracy. And the opposition team tried to explain to us how we elect our representatives in order to take the proper decision. But we believe today that we have to do something more than just some elections at 4 years. We have to have a word to say in order for the society to develop. We have to have a word to say on decisions that affect us in a directly way. And let's see exactly what will happen when we will have this implementation. We talk about the empowering of the people, we talk about the civic sense, and after that I will talk about the polarization of the society. Related to the empowering people, for the opposition team, only the elections are enough, but we consider that these elections are only one step in order to have a working system. These elections are just the first step, and we have to do something more, which is the result when we will have this binding referendum, and we will have people that will be interested in what is happening around in their country. Only in a second, and after that, we will see that by people expressing their wishes related to the decisions that the government takes, the government will have a feedback from the society, and this feedback will help them to improve their strategy. Yes, please.
What assures you that the citizens are more capable of taking decisions than representatives that are experts on these issues?
Well, if people are capable of choosing their own representatives, then people are able to decide on important issues that have a real impact on the whole society. Passing on to the second point of the proposition team, we talk about the civic sense, and the opposition team didn't actually rebuttal it at all. We have this civic sense, and we see that by implementing this measure, we will have a lot of advantages, such as the involvement of the society. We will have people that will choose on things that affect them, and people that will know what is currently happening at the political scene. Let's take, for example, Switzerland, who has this binding referenda, and who holds about 40 referenda, and of 36 of them passed. We see that this country has an improvement. This country has a real relation between the citizens and between the government, because citizens are able to express their opinion more than 4 years, and the government is able to take the proper decisions in order to represent the interest of the society.
On that point?
No, thank you. Passing on to the third point of my case, the polarization of the society. Let's see exactly what will happen if you have this binding referenda. When we have two groups of society, we have the ones that are at power and the ones that are in the opposition, and there are clearly two different types of in this society with different opinions about some important matters. And we see that by stabilizing these two categories, we will have public debates related to important matters. Probably, let's take for example the citizens that want some measure to be implemented, and the parliament who thinks that it would be detrimental for them this to happen. The citizen will be able to express and to have a debate debate on this important matter, and the Parliament will also express this their own opinions. And we see that at the end of the day, we'll have better solutions and better alternatives because we take into consideration the both sides involved. We take into consideration the citizens, and we also take into consideration the representatives that are those who must represent our own interests and have to do the best for us. So what basically the proposition team told you today is that we need a change, and this change, in order to have a better efficiency and in order to have more responsible citizens and in order for us to develop, this change is represented by sovereign referendum. Taking all this in consideration, please propose a motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to hear people, but when the parliament will be the ones in charge of deciding when to hear people. That is what we have heard throughout the proposition speeches, because they propose a system in which the parliament tells when to have a sovereign referendum. So obviously, if they don't want to have one, they won't. If it's not beneficial for them, they won't. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that the debate today is not here citizens versus parliament. We have heard throughout the proposition of the parliament doesn't really want the good of the people and won't decide on the best choices. But the truth is that this doesn't happen. The parliament are chosen for a reason, and they are there because of something. So to start with my speech, I would like to first rebut the arguments that the proposition has given so far and develop our substantial case. So to start, we believe there's a huge contradiction in their case in which they say that the parliament will be the ones to choose about the sovereign referendum. But then the second speaker said that the parliament won't be the ones to choose when to have a sovereign referendum or not, because it will be it will be the choice of the people. But the truth is that we don't really understand your mechanism. No, thank you. When will an important issue become an important issue? When will this be decided? And who will decide if this is an important issue? And even if we had like a clarification and a list of important issues, the parliament will be the one to take the decision. So the decision of having a sovereign referendum or not. So we would like to hear a clarification about that. Then they talked about, no thank you, empowering the people. How it will make politicians fulfill their work. But let me tell you that the work of a politician, of the parliamentaries that are elected, is actually to decide what's best for the country. So if we have sovereign referendums on every issue, what will the parliamentary be doing? What will be their job? To just hear or call to referendums? No, they're there for a reason, because they're capacitated in order to take the best decision for a country. No, thank you. But in any way, even if we had these politicians only there to give our denied sovereign referendum, we still have to hear a problem from the proposition. What is the problem that they're presenting today? What is the problem that we have with parliamentary democracy, which is a system that is working in basically most of the countries of the world? What is the problem with this? No, thank you. Then they talked about the civic sense, how this would actually make you want to participate more with the elections of your country. But we still need a proof, we need an example, because they mentioned Switzerland and said that Switzerland had referendums. But has that had a positive impact on Switzerland? That's what we need to hear from the proposition. The links of the examples that they have given and the arguments. They already know, thank you, get a choice by choosing their representatives. What are the real benefits that they will receive? And why having a sovereign referendum means that they will actually get up from their couches at home and want to vote. No, thank you. That is what we want to hear today. And in their second speech, they talked about polarization of society. How having these sovereign referenda makes us have debates and have discussions with society, in between society, and have different groups that oppose in certain matters. But the truth is that we already have these debates, because the reason why you choose a certain representative is for the ideas that he has. So for example, if I have a parliamentary that has, for example, a law on education, well, I will vote for him because I like the proposals that he gives, but I will have certain debates that will be created before I choose this representative in order to know if I like his proposal or not. So we're already having these debates that you propose, yes?
What do you exactly understand by binding referendum?
By what?
Binding referendum.
I don't really understand what you mean by binding referenda, but what we understand in this motion is sovereign referenda. What you already stated is that you would give the direct democracy to the people in order to choose on important matters. We don't know when this will be given to the people and what are the important matters. So now, going to our substantial case, I would like to finish our split of negative effects on decisions and saying that we already stated that the long-term versus circumstantial majorities wasn't really addressed by the proposition team, and they said that citizens will be influenced by propaganda, but that's exactly what they want because they want the parliament to get involved and to actually give better proposals. So, ladies and gentlemen, if this will happen, so will the parliament that have the parliamentary or the party that has more money and can make a better propaganda win? Because if that is what will happen, obviously our case is still standing in that matter, because we will have only parties with a lot of money that can convince people to vote for them, instead of having the parliamentary people that are capacitated to do this and do not have influence on other things, being the ones that actually choose the matters for the country. Second, you did not refer in any point to what we said about not having enough quorum. We gave a clear example of what happened in London. So why are you saying that we will have more participation in politics if actually we gave you a clear example in which a referendum was held and people didn't want to participate? So the last part of this split is oversimplifying complex issues. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens with sovereign referendum. We have important issues such as abortion brought to a yes or no question. But the truth is that they have so many important parts, so many things that we have to take into consideration that just don't go with a yes or no question. Let's take the example of abortion. There are types of abortion, therapeutic abortion. And the sovereign referendum only brings us to a yes or no question about abortion. And we believe that there is a huge lack of analysis that wouldn't happen if the parliament would have the decision to do what they have to do and take the right choices for the country. So now going on to our case about the parliament. First of all, stability of parliamentary democracy. The basic principle in parliamentary democracy is that people choose their representatives because they trust them. They trust them to do what they promise, and they trust them to do what they're supposed to do. And that's a regime that has worked throughout the years. That's why we have representatives and not delegates, because they choose, because they are capacitated enough to know, and we as people know their proposals and choose them because of that. So why would we have representatives if they would actually just call to referendums or not call to referendums and not actually have an important say on things? You voted for them for a reason, and that reason should be sustained until the end. And our second point is controlled participation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have here a clear example of Tony Blair in the Scottish Devolution, a referendum about the euro. And it was proven by the independent newspaper and a huge analysis that they made that actually proved that Tony Blair only did this to gain popularity, decided to give this referendum because it would be beneficial for them. And without including sovereign referenda, first of all, because it's not required and because it's not important, we are avoiding controlled participation. Because representatives would call to referendum only when it's beneficial for them, because it would be in their hands to decide when to do so. For all of these, ladies and gentlemen, we beg to oppose.
ladies and gentlemen. Today, what the proposition team sustained is the fact that we need the inclusion of sovereign referenda in parliamentary democracy in order to make a balance between what's representative democracy and direct democracy, and in order to combine efficiency with representativity. And then, in order to make people more informed and to make them more involved in what concerns society. And not the last point, in order to help the state to gain, to cooperate with its citizens. So what I will talk today, I will start by rebattling the last points which were brought up by the opposition team. Then I will talk about how the system now works, what we want and why we want this. And then I will talk about the cost and the quorum fact. Now, first about the stability and the fact that people people trust those once they elect those parliamentary once they elect some people in order to represent them, they said they trust them. And on the other hand, today the opposition team sustain the fact that okay, but Tony Blair required a referendum once he thought he was a proper moment for him to require that referendum. What we see today is the fact that they really made a real contradiction in what concerns their substantive. Because we see that they once said, okay, it's good to elect people, but we see that the people that we elect take wrong decisions in order to fulfill their goals. So what we see today is the fact that on one hand, we have those people that we elect. Okay, we elect those people in order to represent them. And on the other hand, we see Tony Blair, which is the person that we elect. No, thank you. That what does he do? He require referenda in order to fulfill what he thinks is right. No, thank you. Now, how system now works, ladies and gentlemen? Now, today the proposition team sustains the fact that we have non-binding referenda in what concerns the parliamentary democracy, and we explain you this. No, thank you. And we explain you this through definition, and we told you this. Now, what we want is to make this equilibrium between representative democracy and the direct democracy by adding those binding referendums, by adding those sovereign referendums, in order to first. In order to empower the people, in order to let them to decide whether it's good or what is good or not for them, in order to make them more informed in what concerns the society problems. How we make them more informed in what concerns society problems is the fact that we, with that polarization we talked about, by the fact that we make, divide, once somebody require a referendum, because we told you that both parliament and citizens can require a referendum. That shows the fact that the opposition think about the fact that only the parliament has the power will fall because of the fact that both parliament and citizens can require a referendum, because that's what referenda means. Means that once parliament can solve the problem, can require a referendum, and once people have the quorum, can require also a referenda. And what we see today by polarization, we see that we have opposition and proposition, like today in this debate. And what we see is the fact that once we require this referenda, we will have ones that stand on the side of the on one side of the referenda, and ones that stay on the other side of the referenda. And what we want today is the fact that those people will be more informed by this political debate that will happen, because of the fact that we will have this opposition and proposition. And we will see that those people will get more informed about what society means and about what happens inside the society. So what we see today is the fact that those people have the real benefit in what concerns the sovereign referendum. And talking about now, talking about the benefits of the actual system, we see the fact that by adding this sovereign referendum, we will have people more implied in this system. And what why is this important to have those people? No, thank you. Implied in the system. Well, we see the fact that in order for a system to work, it needs to be all the time. It needs to have all the time the assurance that it is a good system and it is a system that works proper. And how we can gain this thing by only elect people once for a year? We can do this in actual situation. And what we see is that by adding this referendum, those decisions that those parliamentarians are taking will be much more sustained by the people's will, and they will really fulfill the will of the people and really represent what state should represent in fact. And what we see today is the fact that all those citizens will be will have the capacity and will really can have informed decisions by the polarization we talked about. Now, talking about the costs, we see the fact that today we have non-binding referenda, and those non-binding referenda require money also. So what we see today is the fact that having a binding referenda and that require money, it's kind of the same thing, just that once this referenda is binding, it has the power to decide. Those people have the power to decide, and both the parliament and by doing this, the people really have the power to do something for their state. Now, what we see on the other hand is the lack of the participation that today the opposition team told us that is the wrong thing. What we see, and give us the example of the London and the fact that there were only 34% of the people coming at the referendum. The fact that there were 34% of people coming at the referendum means that people want to require referendum, and the people are interested in doing so. And by letting them searching for, by letting them doing this, both there and the parliament, will solve the both problems. Will solve both problems, because on the one hand we see that people will have will need a number of signatures in order to request a referendum, and that's how we select important issues. And on the other hand, we see that parliament can require this referendum once they don't reach a consensus. And now that's how we solve all the problems of the society. So what to prove you today is the fact that we really need a sovereign referendum by the fact that we see that today we elect people only 4 years and once 4 years, and that's not quite a real representation of our interests, because of the fact that they can represent real what we want by the fact that they don't have this power. And now we told you that this brings benefits both to the people, the state, and improve the civic sense and what concerns the people information and the people desire to do something for their state. So all in all, we really think that sovereign referenda in a parliamentary democracy is the best thing we can do today in order to improve our status quo. So please propose motion.
It's a matter of straight politics. This phrase summarizes this entire debate about referendums. We, as an opposition team, are here to prove that parliamentary democracy does not require the inclusion of sovereign referendum. I'm here to prove right now, as a third speaker of my team, how the proposition's arguments do not stand in this case, and how the opposition's arguments do. For doing this, I have three main clashes that represent the three main factors in the choice of the decision. First the person, then the parliament, and finally the referendum, which is the decision. In each of these clashes, I will present each argument, show the rebuttals, and show how our arguments still stand. Starting with the people. The proposition started with a lovely phrase that we will give power to the people, that they will include more participation into politics. But they also said that nowadays people lack interest and knowledge. And if people lack interest and knowledge, no thank you, how are they capable of making good decisions? These are important issues, as the motion states clearly. If the people make the wrong decision, this will have substantial consequences for their generation and for the future generations of that country. It's a risk we're not willing to take. Then they said that why are they choosing their representatives? What makes them capable of making such a choice? They choose them for that reason, because they are more capable of taking the decisions than they are. So they are representing them, yes?
But you agree on the fact that politicians can take bad decisions and that people cannot directly involved in changing that.
Politicians can eventually have a decision. There's human beings, but the regular citizens who do not have the expertise, who do not have the experience on these issues, are making way worse decisions that the parliament could have made someday. No, thank you. Then they talked about the civic sense. They said that including the referendums will make them have more interest. But when are they going to have this interest? How many referendums will have to make people interest? I will give you an important number that may be substantial in this point. Do you know how much a referendum costs? It costs nothing less than $186 million. That's a huge number, and it was released by the UK, a study that made by the UK Parliament. No, thank you. That's an enormous cost. We're not willing to take because of all the negative effects our referendum might have. No, thank you. As we show very entire case, and as I will show right now. No, thank you. Also, I'll give you an example also to illustrate this. Imagine a housewife that has to take her kids to school, has to do shopping, has to be aware of the bills of her house. She has so many things in mind, and you put her another problem, the referendum. Do you think that she will make a spot in her very busy agenda of taking care of kids, of making shopping, as I said before, to go to this referendum? She has more important things in mind, and she will, no thank you. And she also has more less knowledge than her representative about the issues that we need to know. No, thank you. Then you said that people have no voice. People already have a voice. The issues that would be discussed in referendums are legislative issues. And who's the legislative body and representative democracy? The parliament. They are having a voice in these decisions by choosing their representatives. So I will move on to another point. They said that people can call to a referendum. I don't know if you're aware, in politics, the only body that has the last word in legislative issues is the parliament. No, thank you. People can complain. People can ask for a referendum, but if the parliament doesn't approve it, that won't happen. And finally, no, thank you. No, thank you. And finally, our argument in this clash is circumstantial majorities. We see how people can be affected by different factors such as propaganda, such an issue, such as age issues that make them think differently from other generations. All these factors would affect their decision making. And what did we hear? No, thank you. What did we hear about from the proposition of this argument? Nothing. So it still stands. No, thank you. My next clash is the system, or the parliament. You said that by putting sovereign referendum, we'll have a more efficient system by including the opinion. Well, first of all, we have enough opinion in legislative issues, as I said before, and then how is this going to make the system more effective? Really, we haven't heard, they just said that it's going to be more effective, but we haven't heard how people who are not well informed and who are not well capable of making these decisions will make a system more efficient. Then they said that 100% of the promises will be fulfilled. I would be so happy if every politician would fulfill every single one of the promises they made, but they can't because of factors that will, economic factors, for example, the country situation. Even even if the people ask for a referendum, the parliament has the last word. So this promises won't be fulfilled.
We told you that it's going to be binding. Binding means that the
I understand what binding means.
will
Yes,
make decision legal.
I understand your point. I know what binding means. Binding means that the decision made, well, the decision made is the final decision, but the decision to make the referendum is only on the parliament. We have read this in, no thank you, we have read this in studies, in politics, etc., professors of universities, the last word, when calling to a referendum is of the parliament. Also, you talked about polarization, how making these both poles of the society will help to make better decisions. Polarization is already in the parliament, ladies and gentlemen. We have already different parties in the same parliament, so people choosing those people to represent them is already making the debate in the same parliament. Now moving on to our arguments in this clash. We talked about stability of the parliamentary democracy. The basic principle of parliamentary democracy is that the duty of making the decisions in laws is on the parliament. And if you give this give power to the people, you are undermining this system that has worked for hundreds of years in many countries. You are undermining the basic principle of parliamentary democracy. Then we talked about controlled participation and gave the example of Tony Blair. Then you said that proves that politicians make bad decisions, but that proves that the inclusion of referendums will lead to those decisions because they can do referendums and they will decide to do it whenever they want. Finally, the referendum itself. Here we have a clash between arguments from both teams. Well, first, people will engage because they can have a referendum, but we talked about lack of quorum. This lack of quorum will make the decision not as legitimate as if all the people participated, and it undermines representativity. People won't, the decision made won't represent the majority because not all the people will vote, as illustrated in the example of London. And finally, oversimplifying complex issues. Important issues are issues that will have substantial consequences, as we said before, and taking them to a yes and no question. Because in a voting card, you don't have like add your opinion section. Of course not. You just have the option to say yes and no. We'll oversimplify these issues and not make don't have an effective consequence. Because we believe that parliamentary democracy is just fine as it is, and including referendums will bring more problems than benefits. We beg to oppose. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this debate for the opposition side, I have three different questions. The first one, do we have a problem? The second one, should we accept the costs of sovereign referendum? And the third one, do referendums work? The answer to these three questions, ladies and gentlemen, are no, no, and no. The first one, do we have a problem? We talked about how parliamentary democracy works, how it has worked throughout many, many years, and how it has been just fine the way it is. Do we really feel badly represented? Do we really choose very bad, fake, liars people on our parliament? Do we really have people like that? Do we really vote for them? No, we already have a choice. We vote for those representatives because we know what they think, we know their benefits, we even know their disadvantages, but we choose them for a reason. But they also said that we have a lack of discussion on important matters. The truth is that, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a problem because we do have discussions. We have discussions that make you vote for a certain representative, that make you discuss a certain idea of that a certain representative has. So this is why we believe, as a team, that we don't actually have a problem in the status quo. And even if we had a problem, it wouldn't be solved by requiring the inclusion of sovereign referenda in parliamentary democracy. The second question, should we accept the cost of sovereign referenda? And by cost, we don't only mean money. We don't only mean that we shouldn't accept this because it's expensive. But we gave you two clear examples that were not referred to as the stability of the parliament. because we have people working there. Because we vote for certain people that have a work to do, that is making the best decisions and analyzing the best decisions for a country. So if we have sovereign referenda, the truth is that the stability of the parliamentary democracy would go down because we would have people that have no work but to approve or not approve sovereign referendums. Which brings us to another point, which talks about controlled participation. Because we never heard from the proposition team when these referendums would take place and who would actually approve them. So we assume that the one, as it has happened throughout history, is the parliament, the one that calls to a referendum. The people ask for one and the parliament can either deny it or accept it. So the truth is that we won't accept the cost of having sovereign referenda because of the risk that it can have of the parliament to use it in a way that's convenient for them, or to just have them and actually not give or empower anyone because you will give them when you want and where you want them. And the last question, do referendums actually work? Ladies and gentlemen, we have proven that they do not work. We heard from the proposition many times that it will be beneficial. It would be helpful for society. We would have people that analyze things more, that know more things. But the truth is that we never heard a concrete link on these two things happening. Sovereign referenda and people wanting to vote. Because we have shown you and we stated that not because you have a certain decision that the people can make, that it would actually make them want to take the decision. And we illustrated that through our examples. But there are many more times that these referendums haven't actually had enough quorum. So this is why we do not require the inclusion of sovereign referenda in parliamentary democracy. Because people simply aren't interested. And even if we have them, it wouldn't change the fact that people are not well represented because it wouldn't be a substantial majority. So ladies, we do not have a problem. Should we accept the costs? No. And do referendums work? No as well. For all of this, I beg to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition team refused throughout the debate to debate on our case and on our own substantive of how the parliamentary democracy needs that, of how important is the sovereign referenda to involve the citizens in, and how it really is important at the level of the society. I'm going to talk to you about I'm going to talk about, first of all, representatives, about politicians, and second of all, about the referenda, and third of all, about the people. So passing on to the referendum, they said and they came and said to us, oh, we elect them, we trust them, we know every single weakness of them. But we actually see that in the actual system, they are not capable of fulfilling all they promised in their campaigns. And we are seeing that the people, the politicians are actually sometimes taking bad decisions for the citizens. And we see that throughout these 4 years, we do not really have the means to be involved in how they're acting and to make a change in how they are not making us proud of electing them. So we see that by these 4 years, we do not have really an implication in the taxable system. And we see that it is bad because the decisions are made on the society and on the individual. Passing on to my second point, the referendum. We said from the start that it is going to be binding. Binding meaning that the decision it is going to be implemented immediately after the referendum. We've told you that we have the people that actually have the right to make a referendum by petitions. Petitions meaning signatures, meaning a mass of people that that agree on that issue. So we see that by getting people to get signatures, by getting a mass of people, we see that specific issue is important for the majority of the people. So we see that the argue about what important issue would be is linked to the citizens' needs and what they think is important for them, because they have the right to do that. And of course, by the parliament, by debate, and on a level of national scale, they have the right to do that and to implicate their citizens. And of course, the people. We've told you that in the actual system, it is not, they are not interested in the system. They blame the system for not solving their problems, and but they don't really understand them because they're not involved in them. So I'm going to make an analogy. Throughout a debate, we see that the debate is the political scene. We see that at this debate we have an observer that does not really know something about the political scene. So so he will be not interested in what actually happens in that debate. And we also see the judge that knows what happens in the political scene and knows what's important and what's not important. So we see that by having this, in the actual status quo, we just have an observer. And we see that these people are not really implicated in the actual system of taking the right decision and on the political scene. And by the judge, we mean the people after the referendum. After we involve them and we make them see that the actual system needs them to be informed and to take better decisions. And we have explained that through our case over and over again. So, while taking all this into consideration, we do not think the cost is big. Because if the cost was that big that they said, now Switzerland will have big problems because it had 40 referenda by involving the people. And we see that we actually have the referendum that are held today and that do not really serve as good as it would serve a binding referendum. So taking all this into consideration, we beg this proposal. Alright, thank you for the debate.